start your day tomorrow on Morning Edition. This evening we have dense fog. Otherwise, it will be mostly cloudy, lows around 50 degrees. Currently 61 degrees and overcast in Central Park.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Robert Siegel. Now, Brits Doing Brooklyn. A new production of Arthur Miller's play, A View from the Bridge, has come over from London to Broadway. It's a tragedy about Eddie Carbone, a Brooklyn longshoreman. In this version of the 60-year-old play, there is no furniture, there are no props. Part of the audience sits on stage. Mark Strong plays Eddie Carbone, as he did in the West End. Carbone is very protective of his 17-year-old niece, protective to the point where you wonder, is his affection unwholesome?
I mean, I realize maybe I kept you home too much. But he's the first guy you ever knew, you know. I mean, now you got a job, you might meet some different fellas, you know. You can always come back to him. You're still only kids, the both of you. What's the hurry?
Mark Strong, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I think several people heard that very jarring right now. Having heard you playing Eddie Carbone in A View from the Bridge and now hearing Mark Strong. What's the difference between playing a Brooklyn longshoreman in New York and playing him, as you did before, in London in the same production?
That's a very interesting question, because obviously in London it's exotic. When you talk about Red Hook or Times Square or Flatbush Avenue or anywhere in New York, it's somewhere else. So for an audience there, they can use their imagination, and the whole play becomes exotic. It exists somewhere else. And in fact, we realized that the accents we were using over there were way too strong. We were very proud of the fact that we were doing a kind of really thing like this, you know, and thought we were doing really well. And everybody would come backstage afterwards and go, "It's marvelous authenticity in your accents, how lovely." And we'd be very pleased about that, because when we got here, everyone said, "Just calm down. Nobody really sounds like that," you know. So now we're very conscious of the fact that we need to bring an authentic American / Brooklyn feel to our accents in order to enable the audience to relax.
He's a longshoreman. He's a rough-hewn guy. He's a working-class guy. A couple of the things he says in the play draw laughs from the audience, and I wondered what the challenge was to you to not do caricature, to not do the guy from Married with Children or someone like that, who was a kind of an oafish working class.
It's important not to get laughs where you don't want them in this play, particularly, I think. Having said that, it's not a play that doesn't have laughs within it. And I think the opening of the play, when you see the family together for the first time, the ease and the comfort they have with one another. Catherine describes at one point that Eddie razzes her all the time. You know, I think having an element of that is fine. And also, allowing an audience to relax at the beginning of the play means that the journey you then take them on becomes all the more tense, because they have been allowed to relax, and they do think that perhaps what they're going to witness is something not as harrowing as it ultimately turns out to be.
Arthur Miller wrote this play with very specific stage directions, that people are cooking or having or serving a meal throughout the story, and all that's been stripped off, all that has been taken out. For you as an actor, is it harder or easier to act without things to fidget with, or things to touch and move from one place to the next? Nothing but your character's anger or anxiety, whatever it might be.
I think if you'd asked me that question before I tried it, I would imagine it would be more difficult to act without the usual traffic of the stage, props and furniture, etc. Having done it, it's incredibly exhilarating, I have to say. It's amazing what you don't need in the theatre, because the audience are theatre literate. And in fact, that's what happened to me in rehearsal. I have to reply to somebody asking me at the time. I said 9:15, and I thought I should have a nice 50s watch. And it was Eva, the director, who said, "I'm not interested in how you know the time, just in what the time is." So Actually, it's getting rid of all that furniture, getting rid of the props, getting rid of the need to have a meal. All the stage direction that Miller stipulates means that we're just showing the play in a different way, and it becomes incredibly freeing.
Ivo is Van Hove,
Ivo van Hove.
who is a Belgian director, and this is his approach. Let's get the characters acting, and let's not bother with the couch and the plate and the table, whatever. You ready for stripping other plays of their external props?
I don't know if I can ever do a play again with props, to be honest, with you, and furniture and shoes. Even we wear no shoes.
Okay.
But actually, but Ivo's approach is very fascinating because he's described as avant-garde, basically because he's not presenting the traditional version of the play. He's kind of got rid of all of the trappings that try to persuade you that what you're watching is real. We know it's not real. We can see the audience on stage. You can see the actors have no shoes on. It's not real. If it's not real, what are we then after? What we're after are the emotions, the narrative, the clarity, the relationships, and ultimately the story.
I want to tell people who might be having any trouble visualizing you and can't quite remember your role from The Imitation Game or Tinker Tailor or Kingsman. More than 100 million Americans watch the Super Bowl every year, almost as many as vote for president, not quite. And from January 2014, they heard and saw Ben Kingsley offer this observation as a private plane was landing behind him.
Have you ever noticed how in Hollywood movies all the villains have been both Brits?
Maybe we just sound right. Thank you, Mary.
And that's you, maybe. Maybe you just sound right.
Maybe we just sound right. Yes.
This was a commercial for a car that shall go unmentioned right now. You have played a lot of bad guys.
I've thought about this quite a lot. I realise that I think it's a Brit entree to Hollywood because it's an honourable tradition. Anthony Hopkins did it, Jeremy Irons did it, Ben Kingsley. Back home we have Richard III and Macbeth and Coriolanus. We're kind of not unacquainted with villains and the dark side, and I imagine that when we perform as well, there is something quite exotic and quite interesting about playing a bad guy.
Has this experience of doing A View from the Bridge, first in London and now in New York, does it mean that you're going to keep doing a lot more theater, or is it or will you get back to doing movies more often? What's the balance that you're looking for?
Well, when I started out, I trained for the theatre, and I was pretty much working in the theatre for about 10 years before I even saw a camera. And then the movies came calling, and it was just a genre, a kind of idiom I'd never been involved with, and it became very seductive because it's a fascinating way to work, chopped up like that, short scenes, instant moments. As a long-winded answer to your question, it certainly makes me want to do more because I've suddenly rediscovered the fact that that's where actors belong. We belong on stage with an audience because unlike all other creative artists, whether you're a musician or a novelist, an artist, you can practice your art on your own. Actors can't act for themselves in their own living room without an audience. We need an audience, and I've discovered that there is a purpose to theatre. The reason it's been around for a couple of thousand years is because it has value. We need to see in the live experience, I think, something that makes us ask ourselves what it means to be human, the choices we make in our lives. And if I can find plays and people to work with that ask that kind of question, it's a no-brainer, as they say.
Mark Strong, thanks for talking with us about it.
Well, thank you.
Mark Strong, who is now playing Eddie Carbone on Broadway in Arthur Miller's A View from the Bridge.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
And it's WNYC and WNYC.org. Later tonight on Marketplace, Chip Davis, the creator of Mannheim Steamroller, the band behind popular reimaginings of classic holiday music.
I like to take different carols back to their time, but then I'd rock them out like in Mannheim.
That's coming up tonight on Marketplace at 6:30 right here on WNYC. This evening, dense fog, otherwise mostly cloudy with lows around 50 degrees. Tomorrow, Wednesday, more rain, and it could be heavy at times. Otherwise, areas of dense fog again with a high near 59 degrees. Thursday, a chance of showers, otherwise mostly cloudy with a high near 69 degrees. And Christmas Day, mostly sunny with a high near 61 degrees. Currently, it is 61 degrees and overcast at 5 o'clock.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from Pandora, now also featuring Serial Season 2. Sarah Koenig takes listeners through one true story, episode by episode. More at pandora.com/serial or by searching Serial in the Pandora app. The Burroughs Wellcome Fund, dedicated to advancing the biomedical sciences by supporting research and other scientific and educational activities. More information is available at bwfund.org. And Subaru with the 8th annual Share the Love event through January 2nd. More information about the event and the not-for-profit organizations that it supports is at subaru.com/share. Love, it's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York. Just keep listening.
Iraqi forces stormed Ramadi this morning, a city that the so-called Islamic State has controlled since May. It's Tuesday, December 22nd. I'm Jamie Floyd. This is All Things Considered on WNYC. Iraqi forces are pushing into downtown Ramadi in a bid to oust ISIS occupiers.
This morning, Iraqi security forces began to enter the center of Ramadi. For the past couple of weeks, Iraqi special forces have been leading an operation to retake the city.
An update from Iraq just ahead, plus some Muslim women asking other Muslim women to not wear the hijab. And what is going on in Brazil? We'll find out after news headlines.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Speer. While a U.S. military spokesman is saying the recapture of the Iraqi city of Ramadi from the group the Islamic State is inevitable, he says it may take some time. Colonel Steve Warren saying while Iraqi forces have made progress, it will be a tough fight to retake the city. Warren estimating several hundred Islamic State militants are still in the city.
Rough estimate is between 250 and 350 fighters still remaining in the Ramadi city center.
Losing Ramadi, the capital of Anbar province, was a major blow to the Iraqi government. The U.S. military says American advisors are still in place outside Ramadi at a desert air base that has also served as a training site. The UN's top human rights official says the Saudi-led coalition appears to be responsible for a, quote, disproportionate amount of the attacks on civilians in Yemen. NPR's Michelle Kelman has more on a rare Security Council meeting on that subject.
The Saudi-led coalition is trying to restore to power a president who was ousted by Shiite rebels in Yemen. All sides have hit civilian targets, and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zaid Rad Al Hussein, says children are bearing the brunt.
Conditions of life have become untenable for the vast majority of people in Yemen. The combined impact of violence and artificial impediments to the delivery of humanitarian assistance has proved disastrous.
The U.S. is backing Saudi Arabia. At the same time, Ambassador Samantha Power tells the Security Council that the U.S. is encouraging Riyadh to thoroughly investigate allegations of civilian casualties. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, Washington.
A Connecticut gun maker is pleading guilty to violating federal firearms laws. The owner of Stag Arms will be banned from the firearms business and must now sell the company. Station WNPR Harriet Jones has that story.
During two separate inspections of the New Britain-based company several years apart, federal agents uncovered thousands of violations of record-keeping laws as well as missing and unregistered guns. U.S. Attorney Deirdre Daley is heading the case against Stag Arms.
They manufactured semi-automatic weapons, machine guns, assault weapons. This is not an industry where sloppiness can be tolerated.
She says some 200 guns are unaccounted for.
Not traceable. We don't know where they are, whether they were stolen, whether they're on the streets, or whether they're in the wrong hands.
Stag's owner, Mark Malkowski, was an outspoken critic of the tough gun laws that Connecticut passed in the wake of the Newtown shooting in 2012. For NPR News, I'm Harriet Jones.
The U.S. economy continued to expand during the July through September quarter, though at a slightly slower pace. Latest revision of the gross domestic product, or GDP, the Commerce Department says the economy grew at a roughly 2% annual rate. Stocks closed higher for a second straight session. The Dow up 165 points to 17,417. The Nasdaq was up 32 points today. You're listening to NPR.
And this is WNYC. I'm Jamie Floyd. Mayor Bill de Blasio is guaranteeing the city's non-unionized employees 6 weeks of paid parental leave. Today, the mayor announced his administration's plans to issue an executive order to that effect. Starting next month, all of New York City's 20,000 non-unionized workers will be eligible for the benefit, including maternity, paternity, adoption, and foster care leave at 100% of their salary. De Blasio says it's about giving families the time they need to bond with their new children.
I think it's good policy on a human level, but it also says we're the kind of employer that, our folks should be with for the long haul, because we're trying to really address their needs and their families' needs.
The city's 300,000 union employees will not be covered by the policy, but de Blasio says his administration is open to negotiation, and several union leaders have already signaled their interest in reopening those contracts to add the benefit. Well, not everyone is enjoying the unseasonably warm weather this December. Yarden Vilcom sells French macaroons and custard at a holiday market in Midtown Manhattan. And he says his shop's biggest item, hot chocolate, is just not getting very many buyers this season.
People not really up to hot drinks. The past week we had a day of almost 70, and upcoming Christmas Eve is going to be high of 72, so it affects us dramatically.
Vilcom says sales have dropped more than 50% since last year, and although he's brought plenty of inventory, he says he isn't optimistic about the rest of this week. Temperatures are expected to climb into the low 70s on Thursday, Christmas Eve. In fact, let's take a look at the forecast. This evening, dense fog, otherwise mostly cloudy, lows around 50. Tomorrow, Wednesday, it will rain heavy at times, areas of fog, but it will get up to about 59 degrees. Thursday, we do have chances of showers again, but a high near 69 degrees. And Christmas Day mostly sunny with a high near 61 degrees. Currently 62 degrees at 5:06.
Support for NPR comes from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, dedicated to the belief that investing in women and children today ensures a healthy, prosperous future for everyone. More information is available at gatesfoundation.org.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Robert Siegel. Iraq's battle against the Islamic State has moved into a new stage. Iraqi forces have stormed Ramadi, a city that ISIS has controlled since May. Ramadi is about 60 miles west of Baghdad, and this development has been weeks in the making. We're joined by multimedia journalist Ayman Ogana of Vice News. It's an online news service. Who's joining us on a fairly scratchy line. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
And tell us what's happening in Ramadi.
So right now, Iraqi forces today, actually this morning, started entering the center of Ramadi. It's an operation that's been going on for a few weeks now, and if successful, it'll be the biggest victory for the Iraqi security forces in years. ISIS has been in control of Ramadi since last May, and this is seen as a real litmus test for the US-led coalition strategy to degrade and destroy them.
As you say, this operation has been going on for weeks, at least since early November. Why has it taken so long?
You know, it's not an easy place to control. A decade ago, Ramadi was the sort of de facto capital for Al-Qaeda in Iraq, the group that became ISIS, and it took the US military, 6 or 7 months to gain control of the city. And at the same time, officer in charge, Colonel McFarland, said he didn't have enough men. But luckily, there was a local, what became known as the Awakening, or the Safwa, tribal resistance to Al-Qaeda that helped the US military hold the ground. So it's never been an easy place to control. So I think it's unfair to sort of say the Iraqis have been struggling. What has perhaps changed their fortune is when I was there last week, a lot of men told me that they really have noticed a massive increase in the US-led coalition's air support and airstrikes against ISIS positions. And they said that they believe this was mostly, or clearly noticed, since Russia intervened in Syria. They noticed a massive intensification and increase in US strikes against ISIS in Iraq.
How many ISIS fighters are believed to be in Ramadi now?
What's interesting about Ramadi is it's not like a city like Sinjar, which the Kurdish forces in northern Iraq took earlier in the year, where IS are a sort of external foreign force. Ramadi has always been a center of insurrection, even Saddam Hussein had a hard time penetrating and ruling it. So in Ramadi, the Iraqi security forces are really fighting the city itself and locals there. So it's hard to say the exact number. I mean, the area they're fighting today, the Iraqis said they're expecting about 500 ISIS fighters in this neighborhood. And the US have said that they've killed hundreds if not thousands in the last couple of weeks. But I think the large portion of the population there would support or fight for ISIS.
What actually is the strategic importance of Ramadi in Iraq's battle against ISIS?